Alamut was a mountain fortress located in Alamut region in the South Caspian province of Daylam near the Rudbar region in Iran, approximately 100 kilometers from present-day Tehran. Between 1090 and 1256 AD, under the leadership of Hassan-i Sabbah, Alamut became the site of intense activity for the Shi'a Nizari Ismailis of Persia, along with a smaller subgroup known as the Assassins in Syria, functioning as the headquarters of the state, which was in fact a series of unconnected strategic strongholds scattered throughout Persia and Syria, surrounded by huge swathes of hostile territory. In 1256, Ruknu-d-Dīn Khurshāh surrendered the fortress to the invading Mongols, and its famous library holdings were destroyed. Sources on the history and thought of the Ismailis in this period are therefore lacking, and the majority extant are written by the detractors. After the Mongol destruction, the castle was of only regional significance, passing through the hands of various local powers. Today, it lies in ruins, but because of its historical significance, it is being developed by the Iranian government as a tourist destination. Origins. The origins of the Alamut fortress can be traced back to the Justinid ruler of the Sudan, who, during a hunting trip, witnessed a soaring eagle perched down high on a rock. Realizing the tactical advantage of the location, he chose the site for the construction of a fortress, which was called Alamut, likely meaning eagle's teaching or nest of punishment. Alamut remained under Justinid control until the arrival of the Ismaili chieftain Hasan-i Sabbah to the castle in 1090 AD, marking the start of the Alamut period in Ismaili history. List of Nizari Ismaili rulers at Alamut. Nizari Ismaili dais who ruled at Alamut: Hasan-i Sabbah, Qubuzurg Ahmad, Muhammad ibn Qubuzurg Ahmad, Muhammad bin Qubuzurg Ahmad. Nizari Ismaili concealed imams at Alamut: Ali al-Hadi ibn Nizar ibn al-Mustanzir Bilal al-Hadi bin al-Nizar, al-Mu'tadi ibn al-Hadi, al-Mu'tadi bin al-Hadi, al-Qahir ibn al-Mu'tadi by Qawatullah, by Arkamiullah, al-Qahir bin al-Mu'tadi by Kuvaylullah, by Arkamiullah. Nizari Ismaili imams who ruled at Alamut: Imam Hassan al-Dikrihi al-Salam, Imam Anwar al-Din Muhammad Anwar al-Din Muhammad II, Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan, Imam Ala ad-Din Muhammad Ala ad-Din Muhammad III, Imam Rukn al-Din Khurshāh. History. Following his expulsion from Egypt over his support for Nizar bin Mustanzir, Hasan-i Sabbah found that his co-religionists, the Ismailis, were scattered throughout Iran, with a strong presence in the northern and eastern regions, particularly in Daylam, Khorasan and Khuzestan. The Ismailis and other occupied peoples of Iran held shared resentment for the ruling Seljuks, who had divided the country's farmland into iqta and levied heavy taxes upon the citizens living therein. The Seljuk emirs usually held full jurisdiction and control over the districts they administered. Meanwhile, Persian artisans, craftsmen and lower classes grew increasingly dissatisfied with the Seljuk policies and heavy taxes. Hassan, too, was appalled by the political and economic oppression imposed by the Sunni Seljuk ruling class on Shi'a Muslims living across Iran. It was in this context that he embarked on a resistance movement against the Seljuks, beginning with the search for a secure site from which to launch his revolt. The capture of Alamut by 1090 AD. The Seljuk vizier Nizam al-Mulk had already given orders for Hassan's arrest, and therefore Hassan was living in hiding in the northern town of Qazvin, approximately 60 kilometers from the Alamut Castle. There, he made plans for the capture of the fortress, which was surrounded by a fertile valley whose inhabitants were mainly fellow Shi'a Muslims, the support of whom Hassan could easily gather for the revolt against the Seljuks. The castle had never before been captured by military means, and thus Hassan planned meticulously Meanwhile, he dispatched his reliable supporters to the Alamut Valley to begin settlements around the castle. In the summer of 1090 AD, Hassan set out from Kazvin towards Alamut on a mountainous route through Ande. He remained at Ande disguised as a schoolteacher named Decoder until he was certain that a number of his supporters had settled directly below the castle in the village of Gazorkhana had gained employment at the fortress itself. Still in disguise, Hassan made his way into the fortress, earning the trust and friendship of many of its soldiers. Careful not to attract the attention of the castle's Zaidi, a lead lord, Mahdi, Hassan began to attract prominent figures at Alamut to his mission. It has even been suggested that Mahdi's own deputy was a secret supporter of Hassan, waiting to demonstrate his loyalty on the day that Hassan would ultimately take the castle. Earlier in the summer, Mahdi visited Kazvin, where he received strict orders from Nizam al-Mulk to find and arrest Hassan, who was said to be hiding in the province of Daylam. Upon his return to the Alamut fortress, Mahdi noticed several new servants and guards employed there. His deputy explained that illness had taken many of the castle's workers, and it was fortunate that other laborers were found from the neighboring villages. Worried about the associations of these workers, Mahdi ordered his deputy to arrest anyone with connections to the Ismailis. Mahdi's suspicions were confirmed when Hassan finally approached the lord of the fortress, revealing his true identity and declared that the castle now belonged to him. Immediately, Mahdi called upon the guards to arrest and remove Hassan from the castle, only to find them prepared to follow Hassan's every command. Astounded, he realized he had been tricked and was allowed to exit the castle freely. Before leaving, however, Mahdi was given a draft of 3,000 gold dinars as payment for the fortress, payable by a Seljuk officer in service to the Ismaili cause named Rais Muzaffar, who honored the payment in full. The Alamut fortress was captured from Mahdi and therefore from Seljuk control by Hassan and his supporters without resorting to any violence. Construction and intellectual development. With Alamut now in his possession, Hassan swiftly embarked on a complete refortification of the complex, by enhancing the walls and structure of a series of storage facilities. The fortress was to act as a self-sustaining stronghold during major confrontations. The perimeters of the rooms were lined with limestone, so as to preserve provisions to be used in times of crisis. Indeed, when the Mongols invaded the fortress, Juwayni was astonished to see stored countless supplies in perfect condition to withstand a possible siege. Recent work by Iranian archaeologists at the northern gate of the fortress revealed two interconnected cellars, likely used as private spaces or for food storage. Next, Hassan took on the task of irrigating the surrounding villages of the Alamut Valley. The land at valley's floor was arable land, allowing for the cultivation of dry crops including barley, wheat and rice. In order to make available the maximum amount of cultivable land, the ground was terraced under Hassan's direction. The sloping valley was broken up into step-like platforms upon which abundant food could be cultivated. In times of need, the surrounding villages were well equipped to furnish the castle with ample supplies. The construction of Alamut's famous library likely occurred after Hassan's fortification of the castle and its surrounding valley. With its astronomical instruments and rare collection of works, the library attracted scholars and scientists of a variety of religious persuasions from around the world who visited it for many months at a time. Hosted by the Ismailis. By and large, the writings of the Persian Ismailis, both scientific and doctrinal, did not survive beyond the Alamut period. In addition to the rich literature they had already produced in Arabic, the relocation of the Ismaili center to Iran now prompted a surge in Persian Ismaili literature. The bulk of Nizari writing produced in this period, however, was lost or destroyed during the Mongol invasions, while the majority of Alamut's theological works on Ismailism were lost during the library's destruction. A few significant writings were preserved, including the major anonymous work of 1199 AD entitled Haftbah by Baba Sayyidna and a number of treatises by Nasir al-Din al-Tusi. One of the earliest losses of the library came during the early years of the Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan's leadership at Alamut. In keeping with his principles of bridging the gaping relations between the Persian Ismailis and the broader Sunni world, Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan invited a number of religious scholars from the town of Qazvin to visit the castle's library and burn any books they deemed heretical. However, it was not until under the direction of the Mongol ruler Hulagu Khan, when the Mongols ascended to the fortress in December 1256 AD, that the Alamut library was lost. With the permission of Hulagu, Uvani explored the library and selected a few works he deemed worthy of salvaging, before the remainder was set aflame. His choice items included copies of the Quran, a number of astronomical instruments and treatises, and a number of Ismaili works. An anti-Ismaili Malik Uvani's personal leanings were the sole measure of heretical content of the library's doctrinal works. Thus, some of the richest treatises regarding the tenets of Ismaili faith were lost with his destruction of the library. From his tour and survey of the castle, Uvani compiled a description of Alamut that he incorporated into his chronicle of the Mongol invasions, entitled Tarikh-i-Jahangir Shah Uvani, Concealment and Emergence, Imamate at Alamut. With the death of Hasan-i Sabbah in 1124 AD, the Alamut fortress was now in the command of the Dariki Buzurg Ahmad, under whose direction Ismaili-Seljuk relations improved. However, this was not without a test of the strength of Buzurg Ahmad's command, and consequently the Seljuks began an offensive in 1126 AD on the Ismaili strongholds of Rudbar and Quistan. Only after these assaults failed did the Seljuk Sultan Sunja concede to recognize the independence of the Ismaili territories. 3 days before his death, Buzurg Ahmad designated his son Muhammad ibn Qiyu to lead the community in the name of the Ismaili Imam, Muhammad ibn Buzurg. Accordingly, Muhammad succeeded Buzurg Ahmad in 1138 AD. Though they expected some resistance to his rule, the fragmented Seljuks were met with continued solidarity amongst the Ismailis, who remained unified under Muhammad's command. The early part of Muhammad's rule saw a continued low level of conflict, enabling the Nizaris to acquire and construct a number of fortresses in the Kumus and Rudbar regions, including the castles of Saadat-Ku, Mubarak-Ku, and Firoz-Ku. Muhammad designated his son Hassan, born in 1126 AD, to lead the community in the name of the Imam. Hassan was well trained in Ismaili doctrine and ta'wil. Imam Hassan al-Dikrihi al-Salam, taken by illness in 1162 AD, Muhammad was succeeded by Hassan, who was then about 35 years of age. Only 2 years after his accession, the Imam Hassan al-Dikri al-Salam apparently conducted a ceremony known as Qiyamah at the grounds of the castle of Alamut, whereby the Imam would once again become visible to his community of followers in and outside of the Nizari Ismaili state. Given Uvani's polemical aims, and the fact that he burned the Ismaili libraries, which may have offered much more reliable testimony about the history, scholars have been dubious about his narrative but are forced to rely on it given the absence of alternative sources. Fortunately, descriptions of this event are also preserved in Rashid al-Din's narrative and recounted in the Haftbah by Abi Ishaq, an Ismaili book of the 15th century AD. However, these are either based on Juwayni, or don't go into great detail. No contemporary Ismaili account of the events has survived, and it is likely that scholars will never know the exact details of this time. The Imam Hasan-i Sabbah died only a year and a half after the declaration of the Qiyamah. According to Juwayni, he was stabbed in the Ismaili castle of Lambazar by his brother-in-law, Hasan-i Ismaili version of the Alamut history. What little we know about the imamate at Alamut is narrated to us by one of the greatest detractors of the Ismailis, Juwayni. According to the Ismaili version of the events, in the year following the death of the Imam Caliph al-Mustanzir, a Qadi by the name of Sa'idi traveled from Egypt to Alamut, taking with him Imam Nizar's youngest son, who was known as al-Hadi. Imam Hadi apparently lived in concealment in the Alamut Valley, under the protection of Hassan-i Sabbah, then the chieftain of the Nizari Ismaili state. Following him were Imam Mu'tadi and Imam Kahir, also living in concealment from the general population, but in touch with the highest-ranking members of the Ismaili hierarchy. These living and visible proofs of the existence of the concealed imams are known in Ismaili doctrine as hujjat. The period of the imam's concealment was marked by central direction from the chieftain of the Alamut fortress across the Nizari Ismaili state. With the emergence of Imam Hasan-i Sabbah, however, the period of concealment was now complete. Imam Anwar al-Din Muhammad, succeeding Hasan-i Sabbah in 1166, was the Imam Anwar al-Din Muhammad II who, like his father and the imams of the pre-Alamut period, openly declared himself to his followers. Under the 40-year rule of the Imam Anwar al-Din Muhammad, the doctrine of imamate was further developed and, consistent with the tradition of Shi'a Islam, the figure of the Imam was accorded greater importance. Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan. Within Persia, the Nizaris of the Qiyamah period largely disregarded the former political endeavors and became considerably isolated from the surrounding Sunni world. The death of Muhammad II, however, ushered in a new era for the Nizaris, under the direction of the next Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan. Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan invited Sunni scholars and jurists from across Khorasan and Iraq to visit Alamut, and even invited them to inspect the library and remove any books they found to be objectionable. During his lifetime, the Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan maintained friendly relations with the Abbasid Caliph al-Nizar. An alliance with the Caliph of Baghdad meant greater resources for the self-defense of not only the Nizari Ismaili state, but also the broader Muslim world. Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad. After his death in 1221, Imam Jalal al-Din Hassan was succeeded by his son, Ala al-Din Muhammad, ascending to the throne at only 9 years of age. Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad continued his father's policy of maintaining close relations with the Abbasid Caliph. Under the leadership of Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad, the need for an imam to constantly guide the community according to the demands of the times was emphasized. Intellectual life and scholarship flourished under the rule of Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad. The Nizari libraries were invigorated with scholars from across Asia, fleeing from the invading Mongols. Among these intellectuals, some, including Nasir al-Din Tusi, were responsible for important contributions to Ismaili thought towards the end of the Alamut period, having written on the topics of astronomy, philosophy, and theology. Tusi's notable contributions to Ismaili thought include Rawdat al-Taslim, which he composed with Hasan-i Mahmud Khatib, and Sayal Virginia Sulak, his spiritual autobiography. Following his two major ethical works, al-Tusi studied under the patronage of the Ismaili Imam at the Alamut Library until it capitulated to the Mongols in 1256. Imam Ruknu-d-Dīn Khurshāh. By the time of Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad's murder in 1255, the Mongols had already attacked a number of the Ismaili strongholds in Khorasan. Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad was succeeded by his eldest son Imam Ruknu-d-Dīn Khurshāh, who engaged in a long series of negotiations with invading Mongols, and under whose leadership the Alamut Castle was surrendered to the Mongols. The Mongol invasion and collapse of the Nizari Ismaili state. The expansion of Mongol power across Western Asia depended upon the conquest of the Islamic lands, the complete seizure of which would be impossible without dismantling the ardent Nizari Ismaili state, consisting of over 50 strongholds unified under the central power of the Imam. The Nizaris represented a significant obstruction to the Mongol undertaking. The task of successively destroying these castles was assigned to Hulagu, under the direction of his brother, the great Khan Mongol. Only after the destruction could the invading Mongols proceed to remove the Abbasid Caliph from Baghdad and advance their conquest westward. Before Hulagu set forth toward Persia, the threat to the Muslim world posed by the swelling Mongol force was perceived by the Ismaili Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad, who in 1238 joined the Abbasid Caliph al-Mustanzir in appealing to the European monarchs of England and France to coalesce in a Christian-Muslim alliance against the Mongols. Although the European rulers did not accept this proposal, the Ismaili Imam partnered again with the Sunni Caliph in 1246 AD when the two journeyed to the enthronement of the great Khan Guluk in Mongolia. The joint expressions of peace were not acknowledged by the Mongol lord, and shortly after, in 1252 AD, the Mongols arrived in Khorasan. The first Mongol attack on the Ismailis came in April 1253 AD, when many of the Khorasani fortresses were lost to the Christian Mongol general Ketbuka. By May, the Mongol troops had proceeded to the fortress of Gurdku, where Ismaili forces held ground for several months. In December, a cholera outbreak within the castle weakened the Ismaili defenses. Reinforcements quickly arrived from the neighboring Alamut fortress and thwarted the attacking Mongols, killing several hundred of Ketbuka's troops. The castle was saved, but the subsequent Mongol assaults on the towns of Tun and Tus resulted in massacres. Across Khorasan, the Mongols imposed tyrannical laws and were responsible for the mass displacement of the province's population. After the massacres at Tun in 1256 AD, Hulagu became directly involved in the Mongol campaign to eliminate the Ismaili centers of power. From a lavish tent erected for him at Tus, Hulagu summoned the Ismaili governor at Khorasan, Nasir al-Din Mutashim, and demanded the surrender of all fortresses in his province. Nasir al-Din explained that submission could only come at the Imam's orders, and that he, as governor, was powerless to seek the Ismailis' compliance. Meanwhile, Imam Ala al-Din Muhammad, who had been murdered, was succeeded by his son Ruknu-d-Dīn in 1255 AD. In 1256 AD, Ruknu-d-Dīn commenced a series of gestures demonstrating his submission to the Mongols. In a show of his compliance and at the demand of Hulagu, Ruknu-d-Dīn began the dismantling process at Alamut, Maimandis and Lamazar, removing towers and battlements. However, as winter approached, Hulagu took these gestures to be a means of delaying his seizure of the castles, and on November 8, 1256, the Mongol troops quickly encircled the Maimandis fortress and residence of the Imam. After 4 days of preliminary bombardment with significant casualties for both sides, the Mongols assembled the mangonels around the castle in preparation for a direct siege. There was still no snow on the ground and the attacks proceeded. forcing Rukn al-Din to declare his surrender in exchange for his and his family's safe passage. A Yali was drafted and taken to the Imam by Juwayni. After another bombardment, Rukn al-Din descended from Maimonides on the 19th day of November. In the hands of Hulagu, Rukn al-Din was forced to send the message of surrender to all the castles in the Alamut Valley. At the Alamut fortress, the Mongol Prince Balahai led his troops to the base of the castle, calling for the surrender of the commander of Alamut, Muqaddam al-Din. It was decreed that should he surrender and pledge his allegiance to the Great Khan within 1 day, the lives of those at Alamut would be spared. Maimonides was reluctant and wondered if the Imam's message of surrender was an actually act of duress. In obedience to the Imam, Muqaddam and his men descended from the fortress, and the Mongol army entered Alamut and began its demolition. Compared with Maimonides, the Alamut fortress was far better fortified and could have long withstood the assaults of the Mongol army. However, the castle was relatively small in size and was easily surrounded by the Mongols. Still, the most significant factor in determining the defeat of the Ismailis at Alamut was the command by the Imam for the surrender of the castles in the valley. Many of the other fortresses had already complied. Therefore, not only would Muqaddam's resistance have resulted in a direct battle for the castle, but the explicit violation of the instructions of the Imam, which would impact significantly on the Ismaili commander's oath of total obedience to the Imam. The conquest of the Ismaili castles was critical to the Mongols' political and territorial expansion westward. However, it was depicted by Juwayni as a matter of divine punishment upon the heretics, the nest of Satan. Juwayni's depiction of the fall of the Nizari Ismaili state reveals the religious leanings of the anti-Ismaili historian. When Rukn al-Din arrived in Mongolia with promises to persuade the prevailing Ismaili fortresses to surrender, the Great Khan Monkey no longer believed the Imam to be of use. En route back to his homeland, Rukn al-Din was put to death. In his description of this, Juwayni concludes that the Imam's murder cleansed the world which had been polluted by their evil. Subsequently in Khorasan, the Ismailis were called by thousands to attend large gatherings, where they were massacred, while some escaped to neighboring regions. The Ismailis who perished in the massacres following the capture of the Ismaili garrisons numbered nearly 100,000.